Welcome back to the Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studio. Anthony, you and I were just at the ribbon cutting for the 1881 restaurant that's going to be put in the middle of Union Depot, which coincidentally 20 years ago, I almost bought a condo in that place. Looked awesome. It's owned by the owner of Lake Elmo Inn. We were lucky enough to get the invite. We saw Karin and Phil Housey there. We saw Matt Maka, Craig Leopold, and looks like it's going to be a cool restaurant. Open Wednesday to Sunday, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. So an extra restaurant to go to maybe lunch after morning skates and practices.
It could possibly be a pregame stop on your way to a Wild game.
Not before you're on the air, though.
Not before I'm on the air, but for fans, for general fans. Good food tonight, great crowd. It was a fun event. It was cool. It's a great setting. It's a really cool spot down in St. Paul, and it's... I have to see. It might be a little bit of a long walk on a cold day to get to a Wild game after a pregame dinner, but you never know.
Yeah. And I don't think the train stops at the X. You can take the light rail, actually. That's right across the street. So thanks to John, the owner of Lake Elmo Inn, for having us out there. Fun event. Anthony, nothing's happened since the last time we did a podcast.
Well, a lot has happened, just not a lot with the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, exactly. Our next live show, though, that'll be fun. August 14th, next Wednesday night at 7 p.m. over at Split Rocks. It's been a minute since we've done a live show. You and Gorgie did one in the end of June. I was on Gorgie's pod the other day, Wooden Sticks. That was fun. Yeah. It was fun. He does a good job with that, you know.
He does a nice job.
Yeah, he does a nice job. They make a steak well, or what's his line?
It actually originated from when he and I were covering Gopher hockey together, and we were out at Colorado College at the Broadmoor resort, and it went down for it was a continental breakfast essentially, but it was a little bit more. It was a buffet, and you went up and you served yourself. You didn't even order anything. So you go through the line, you get your eggs, your bacon. The only thing the waitress did was refill his Diet Coke, which who has Diet Coke with their breakfast? I don't know, but Kevin does. And so we get done and he's going to leave a tip and he's like, well, we got a tip. I said, well, we don't even have a bill because the breakfast was included in the hotel, but you can go ahead and tip. And well, I mean, they refilled your Diet Coke and everything. I mean, she did a nice job. She did a nice job.
Nice job is now his line.
So it started with that, and then it was evolved because the next restaurant we went to was they put the French fries right there on the plate, and the ketchup is right on the burger. I mean, they do a nice job. Yeah. And so then that became a running joke that everywhere we went, that if they did just the most basic task, like they set your fork right there on the table for you, so you have it when you need it. They do a nice job.
Yeah, Gorgie, he's one of a kind. But it was fun. It actually got me, sort of in, I almost said excited for the hockey season, but he and I joked at the end of that podcast, and I know you definitely don't feel the same way as me. But for some reason, every time August hits in the calendar, I get that feeling of going back to school where it's like part excitement, but then part dread, and it's really that way, come Labor Day, like where just all of a sudden you get excited for the hockey season, but then you're like, oh my God.
And I get the opposite. I go through, in fact, I was just talking about this yesterday when we were in our office getting ready for the Twins and the Cubs. And a couple of the guys were like, you ready for hockey season? And I said, I'm not ready yet, but I'm right about at that point where every year it hits that hockey season's almost here. And I start to get the excitement level, because for most of the summer, to me, it feels that I can't even remember the last time I did a hockey game. It feels like forever ago. The Stanley Cup finals are going, and was this even a season that the Wild participated in? Feels like it's been months since I've done a game, and it feels like forever until next season. And then about this time of year, I'd say maybe another week or two, is when it starts to be, oh boy, like all the things I thought I wanted to make sure I did before next season with my game file, my prep, that kind of thing. I suddenly I got to get this done like next week, or I'm not going to have time to get it done before we start doing preseason games. And so for me, it's 100% excitement and anticipation at this point. And I'd say it usually hits mid-August, where all right, we are almost to hockey season and I can't wait.
Yeah. And for me, it's more like, from a writing perspective, it's so laborious.
Yeah, because you hate writing.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I love calling the games.
Plus Joe Smith's going, so at the Athletic, you get, I think 5 months for paternity leave. And so, but you also get to split it up. So he's back on the clock now, but he's then going back on paternity leave, mid-September, right when training camp's starting. So I know the first 3 months of the season, it's all me. So that you I'm going to be missing Joe, going out there on.
So you're going to have to work every game.
Yeah.
Like the TV guys do.
Yeah. I'm going to have to go back to my old ways of doing things. So that's part of it. But I assume it's that way for players too. All of a sudden, you can't hide anymore. You better get yourself in shape and all that stuff. Not necessarily a sports writer, but I mean, August 1st comes around and those players are like, holy crap, we better make sure we are ready for the start of camp. And
if they haven't been doing it already, for sure, there is that panic moment.
But especially some of the European guys, because I mean, like Zuccarello tells us, Gustafson tells us. I mean, some of the places they live, there's no ice until about now, and so they're getting on the ice. They've got to get going, and
but you can train and be in shape even if you're not skating.
Yeah,
because if you get on the ice, let's say even September 1st. And you get on, you're going to be just fine by the time the regular season starts. You might not be as sharp day one of training camp, but for those veteran guys who aren't fighting for a roster spot, I think it's keep your body fresh and rested, get it stronger, get it healthy during the off season. I'm not saying go lay in the back of a boat with your feet up and drink beers all summer, but there's something to be said for get the skates off your feet, stay off the ice for a while, and come back refreshed, stronger, in great shape, healthy, but not having overdone it all summer as a skater.
Right. And obviously the players, most of them, all of them are on the ice now. In fact, Zuki, I just mentioned his charity game in Norway. It's actually going to be at the Lillehammer Olympic Arena. That's coming on the 17th. I think confirmed Wild players as of now are Joel Eriksson, Matt Boldy, Jonas Brodin, and Brock Faber. Those are the four that I know. And that'll be going on the 17th. So you'll be seeing that. I think Norway still has the sort of the law that no Russians allowed at point of entry. So that's why Kaprizov wouldn't be there, at least as of now. That's the way it was last summer as well. So that's going on. The only real news of the week is Marco Rossi has decided not to take part in the Olympic qualifier for Austria, which is obviously huge news in Austria since he would have been the captain if they qualify for the Olympics. But it is so important for him and the Wild for him to focus on the Wild and what is going to be a big role this season that he has decided to come back here in a couple weeks. And so he'll be here for the rest of the off season.
Until the clarify, that doesn't mean he's not going to be on the Austrian team.
Well, no, he is not. He is. So I guess you could say if they qualify, they could put him on the team.
Right.
The chance of them qualifying is very little because they're in the same group as Slovakia. So
it's low.
And
but
the way
if they were to make the Olympics, Marco Rossi would be on that team.
Matt Zuccarello is not going to be is going to take part in the Olympic qualifier for Norway. So and they have a real good chance of winning that group. But Austria is in a real tough group with Slovakia, and most likely Slovakia is going to win that group anyway, even if Rossi was part of it. So yes, if for some reason they upset Slovakia in that group, Rossi would clearly be on the Olympic team. Maybe not captain now, because I can't imagine his team's very happy he's not going to be in the qualifier. But let's be honest, everybody listening to this podcast cares about the Wild. The fact that Rossi, again, is showing such commitment and is coming over here early, is going to take part in Spurgeon's captain's practices over at Tria and all that stuff. I know he's had great conversations with John Hines in the last couple of weeks. I think Matt Harder, their strength and condition coach, actually flew over to Europe to meet with a bunch of the European athletes to check in on them. And one of them was Rossi, and he's said to be already stronger coming into this year. And we know how much he put on in terms of strength last year coming into camp. So that's good news. But really, other than that, The only thing going on right now, Anthony, is the Wild's continued interest in Patrick Laine. There are a lot of players a lot of teams, parties involved in this as well. Teams with more cap space that would probably make an easier trade. Don Waddell, the new GM for the Columbus Blue Jackets, has already gone on record saying he doesn't want to eat half his contract. Well, if he doesn't eat half the contract,
can't come to Minnesota.
Probably not. I mean, even if Gaudreau and Gustafsson were in that move, it'd be really hard to make that work if it's not half. So,
well,
but
would you even want to try to make a deal work for Patrick Laine if you had to pay him more than half?
Yeah, I mean, like
I don't know if I would.
If I'm the Wild, probably not. I mean, because again, then you have him at 2 years at 4.35. And
you'd have him a lot more than that if they didn't need half.
Right. It would be a lot more money. But say they take half, even at 4.35, that takes you out of players next summer. Like I'd rather wait.
I'm saying if they weren't willing to take half, to me that puts Minnesota out. There's no way I want that. I don't want to take on the 4.35. Let alone 8.5. There's no way that I would want to roll the dice for anywhere close to $8.5 million.
And even if it was 30%, 40%, it's just hard to make the math work. And so, but the one thing I can tell you from talking to sources is that Bill Guerin has genuine interest in him and feels at half price it's a no-brainer. But again, you got to make a trade work first. And I don't see how the only way the trade to me can work is if it's Gaudreau and Gustafsson. And I don't see how Columbus would have any interest in Gustafsson if Merzlikins is still in the fold. So then you've got to figure out a way to get Merzlikins somewhere else. So you probably need a third party involved. And at this point in the summer, it doesn't seem like a lot of teams need goalies, or maybe Gustafsson would even be traded by now. So it just feels like this is probably going to be a fruitless endeavor. But I do think that at some point Bill Guerin is going to at least have a conversation with Patrick Laine. This is abnormal and usually in trade fronts, but again, he just came out of the player assistance program, the NHL and the NHLPA. I think all GMs that are interested in Patrick Laine are going to want to have a conversation to him to see how he's doing, where his fitness level's at, medically where he's going, because remember he's coming off shoulder surgery as well last summer. So this is somebody that his production has fallen off dramatically the last couple of years. He's no longer the guy that scored 40, 50 goals.
Well, he had 40 plus 1 year in Winnipeg. He had 2 30-goal seasons, I think, and then when he got to Columbus. It was like 22 and 25 or something like that. And of course, last year's season was shortened to just 15 or 18 games. I just don't see a guy that is likely to regain that form where he scored 35 or 40. And remember how good those Winnipeg teams were when he scored 40. How loaded they were offensively. And that was one of those years was the Winnipeg team that beat the Wild in the playoffs that looked like they were built for a couple of years to be a contender in the West.
Chuck Fletcher got fired a couple days later.
Yeah, and I also wonder, to me, anytime the whole situation that sent him to Columbus for Pierre-Luc Dubois was two teams trying to get rid of a guy that was a problem for them that they thought a fresh start might be the answer, and it turned out to not be the answer for Laine. So I'd have concerns about that. I have reservations about that, even at half of his salary. It's not to say that somebody's not going to get a steal if they all of a sudden do get him at half price and he is the old Patrick Laine. Now you got something, but I just don't know how likely that is.
Yeah, and I can see why the Wild would have interest. Obviously, they'd like to achieve two things this summer. Obviously, they went out and traded for signed Yakov Trenin to try to really shore up the bottom six, the middle six, you could say, because he's probably a third-line guy in Minnesota. But the Wild also would love the way to get Marcus Johansson off that second line, really take a load off of guys like Matt Boldy and Kirill Kaprizov, who the brunt of the offense really falls on them. So you can see why they would have interest. But again, it just feels to me that it's going to be a really difficult trade to make. The other thing is we don't know what Dean Evison thought of Philip Gustafson? Is Dean going to sit there and bang his hands and say to Don Waddell, yeah, get me Gustafson? I mean, Gustafson got off to a horrendous start last year that essentially spelled the end of Dean in Minnesota. You think he's going to be like, yeah, go get him?
Well, this is a little bit of speculation and a little bit
even talking Gustafson speculation.
And, right. But I think he'd look at it. He might be willing to go in and say, I did see this guy play really well for 2.5, 3 months at the end of a season and take the reins of a team and lead us into the playoffs. Then I saw a guy unable to hold on to a number one job clearly in the fall when we wanted him desperately to be that guy, wanted him to be the 55 game guy and allow Marc-Andre Fleury to play 25 to 30. And what we envisioned as being a great tandem turned out to be less than that, and Gus was the major culprit for that. So I don't know that he'd be in there pounding his fist on the table saying, please go get this guy, but I could see him saying, I have seen enough in potential from him to think at a low price, he's worth a shot.
Yeah, it would make sense from that standpoint. We know that he'd want Goudreau. I think that's a no. That's a guarantee. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break. Hey, it's Russo for Aquarius Home Services. Get ready for the Apex 15 heating and cooling system, a high-efficiency, worry-free solution for your entire home. This system includes a state-of-the-art heat pump and air purification system, plus an industry-leading 15-year parts and labor warranty. And here's the best part. During the mega sale, you can save up to $8,000. Don't miss out. Schedule your free new system consultation today at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. And remember, mention that Russo sent you. Anthony, tell us about Feller's Ranch.
Well, I'm excited. As we've talked over the last couple of weeks, Feller's Ranch has joined our show as one of our newest sponsors. I'm thrilled about that because of the quality of their steaks is second to none. They're the best steaks I've had. We had Vinny on. He talked about the spinalis cuts that we had tried. We've had their Denver cuts, which are unbelievable. Their ribeyes are terrific. We just had those at Ariana's graduation weekend. But right now, they just have announced that you'll be able to get their brisket at a place down in the southwestern suburbs, Northern Fire Barbecue. It's a cool spot. They've got an unbelievable selection of spices. And I know that the Fellers guys are really excited to have their Wagyu brisket available there. So if you're interested in brisket, you can check it out there. But as always, if you want their steaks delivered directly to your house, just go to fellersranch.com. Their vans are in the cities every week. They'll get it right to your front door. It couldn't be much easier, and you will not be disappointed in their cuts of steak.
Back here, Worst Seats in the House, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Again, our next live show is August 14th, 7 p.m. at Split Rocks, and the Feller's Ranch guys are coming out there.
They're going to be there. They're going to give away a couple of steaks and a couple of gift certificates. And if you're into steak, it's a fascinating group with which to talk. They'll tell you a lot. They'll tell you everything you want to know about how the cattle are raised, how they're processed, how the steaks are graded, how they determine what they're going to use as a steak, what they're going to turn into hamburger, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure that they'll be happy to answer all those questions. If you're into steak at all, it'd be a great night to come out, not to mention the fact that you've got an opportunity to win a couple of chances to try the steaks, and they're the best I've had. You'll love them. You won't be disappointed. It's worth it. It's worth it to come out to the show for a myriad of reasons, but that is one of them.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one too, because we got the Fellows Ranch people out there, as you mentioned. But it's our first live show since Portugal, so I'm sure we're gonna have a bunch of our Portuguese.
Our Portuguese travelers.
Yes, exactly. So that'll be fun. One thing I also want to tell people, and Anthony might be golfing in this, is the Mark Pavlich charity event 2024 is going to be August 18th. It's the gold medal meet and greet that will be at the golf course in Prior Lake. Kevin Gorg is the MC, Anthony. How about that? And there'll be 1980 Olympians there, a lot of celebrities as well, including maybe Anthony LaPanta. Tickets should be a really fun night as well. Their tickets are about $100. And if you go to this website, I would definitely... I
think the golf event's on the 19th. The banquet's on the 18th.
The golf event is the 19th. So you can go to the golf event. You could also, they got some spots in the the banquet's the 18th. They still got some spots, I'm pretty sure, in the 19th, but they have a ton of room still for the banquet. And there's going to be people like Barry Beck there, Clint Blarchuk. It's going to be really cool. And this is all part of that vision for the Mark Pavlich's ranch up there, Teammates for Life. Go to this website to get more information and to maybe purchase spots for the banquet or the golf event. It's event.auctria, so octria.com. Go there, and then if you type the ranch, you'll be able to find it. So it's a bunch of characters in this email address. So if you go to that website, you'll be able to get more information on it. We'll tell you a little bit more next week as well.
I can relate to characters, problems, and email addresses.
You wouldn't believe how many characters are in this one.
It's unbelievable how a changeover in our company has caused a derailment where like I've had no email access for most of like 6 days. Occasionally it'll pop up and I'll get like 5 emails sent to me, and then I won't get another one for like 12 hours. Today I showed up in the office to get ready for the Twins live pregame show and couldn't get on my computer. It has been a nightmare. I've spent more time on the phone with IT people than I've ever cared to do before in my life. But now I think I have it figured out. I can access my email, but only on a website. I can't use Outlook for it anymore. It's been a nightmare.
This is the second week in a row you've mentioned this. I think this is also your way of telling people, like, this is, if you know,
just
this
in
is a
case,
great excuse.
If you have tried,
great excuse.
If I fail to reply to your email, this could be why. No, that's a possibility.
Same with me. I'm having all sorts of email
problems. What? I got some good news, though, today on this front. So last fall, I had booked a flight on Delta to go to Vegas. I was going to go visit Vinny because he lives a couple hours from Vegas. And when I booked the flight, I fully knew that there was a chance I was going to have to cancel it the next day. And they have if you book the flight, you get 24 hours to cancel it. And the next day I called because then it wasn't going to work. So I was going to cancel it. Well, they said, well, you can't cancel it because your flight is less than 24 hours away. I had booked the flight like 2 days in advance. And I said, well, that would have been nice to know when you told me I had 24 hours to cancel. You didn't say, but in this case, you really don't because the flight is less than 24 hours from that point.
Right.
So I was on the phone with these people. This is when the Wild were leaving New Jersey last year in like October, late October. And I was on the phone with them and I said, well, what can I do? They said, well, you can change the flight because you can't cancel it. And I said, well, change it to what? They said, you can change it to anything in the next year. And I said, well, I don't have another flight in mind. They said, well, we can give you a voucher. And I said, or I could just pick a flight. And as long as I picked a flight in March, in theory, I could then change that again. Yep, you could do that. Well, this whole conversation was going on with the Delta helpline as the team charter is like rolling down the runway, leaving New Jersey. And I eventually got cut off. So I wasn't positive, like, because we took off. And I was like, well, the last I heard was I was going to have 12 months to use this voucher thing. And she had said they were going to email it to me. Well, I've never gone back to it. I one time tried to call, like, I don't know, in like March or April when it popped into my head, and I waited on hold for like an hour and gave up. So today I called because I was like, I'm sitting at my desk. I've got 2.5 hours of a Twins game. I'll just leave the hold music on my phone while I'm watching the game. Well, all of a sudden this woman comes on. I said, all right, here's the story. I got this. And I've never seen anything, but I know I'm getting close to 12 months from when this happened. And so I tell her the story. She said, hold on 1 second. She comes back in like 7 seconds and says, oh yeah, it's there. I said, what do you mean it's there? Like, what do you, she said, go on you go on the Delta wallet app and look in your e-credits or whatever.
Yeah.
And sure enough, here's my credit for this ticket that I paid like $579 for. Plus, I have 2 $100 Delta credits. I have no idea what those are from, but I would have never known to look in this little folder.
You need to ask me this stuff.
Like, well, why would I ever look in this folder? Like, I don't even. So
I go in there like daily
for what? Like, where
just
do they
to look
come
to make
from?
sure they're still there.
Well, but so I said, oh yeah, I see it. I've got this $579 non-transferable credit, which I was asking her if I could transfer it and said maybe, but then I have these 200, and I said, I got these $200 e-credits. She said, yep, that's what you've got. Well, I didn't even want to ask, like, how did I get these? Because I was fearful she'd say, well, wait, that was a mistake. You shouldn't have them. So I just found out today as a little bonus. I have like $779 in.
What are you going to do with it?
Well, I'm actually hoping to use part of it to. Vinny was trying to come home for the Donkey Hockey League draft this year in a golf tournament. So I got a call. She said, you have to find the specific flight you want, then call us back, and we'll have to get the supervisor to see if you can transfer that first $579 or something. But I might use it for that, and then I don't know, I'll go on a trip
you
somewhere.
could use it at $779. Probably send like Margo to Hawaii or something. You could try that.
I could, but she would want to go with me.
Well, maybe she wants to go along. Be a good little respite.
No, but so I was a little bonus today. I found out I've got some money to spend at Delta.
I've had some weird Delta experiences the last couple months.
I don't know what the $100 comes from.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably some promotions or something that you signed up for unknowingly. Like I have $100 thing in there. Like I had something put in recently too because I bought a round trip, but also spent this type of money in a certain amount. But I've told you this. Like I've had some experience. Like even going to Prague next week for the NHL media tour. I just changed the date of my thing to go like a day early. And next thing I know, I get like $350 back, and it allowed me to upgrade myself from like coach to freaking Delta One. Like, I don't even know how that's possible. So essentially I got a $340 credit, and I'm going Delta One. So just by moving it up a day. So it's just, I don't know. Delta.
Yeah, you should really look at your flights more closely when you travel.
Yeah, I know. All right. By the way, you mentioned the Twins. So I brought my nephews to the Twins game the other day. We went to that White Sox game. What a historically bad team that
Unbelievable.
is. I mean, it's truly unreal.
They did win a game, so the losing streak ended at 21.
Yeah. Congratulations.
But there's been an old saying in baseball for years that every team, no matter how good, how bad, everybody wins 60, everybody loses 60, and it's the 40 in between that separate teams. Mm-hmm. There is this team. Well, number one, they almost mathematically can't get to 60 anymore. But then I was talking with Denard Span about it when we were in the studio, and he said he had an old coach who told him that everybody wins 40, everybody loses 40, and it's the other 80 that decide it. And I said, I don't even think they're going to get to 40. I think they have 28 wins right now. I mean, we are talking about a team that's as bad as any that baseball has seen in maybe ever.
Well,
it's
even just like
how bad they are.
The first inning of that game, I think it was like a leadoff walk or something. Then they get an out. Then the guy picks off maybe Castro from first base. So now you have two outs. And just out of the blue, a routine ground ball to second base, and guy boots it. And next thing you know, it's like, walk, run. I mean, like they always seem to show why they are the bad news bears.
Every time you think that, you wonder like how a team can be that bad, they prove it. And we were talking about this a little bit during the Twins pregame show in that series, that there is something to be said for the Twins taking advantage of the White Sox the way they have. They've beaten them 12 out of 13 times. And there is such a fluky nature to baseball that it is hard to beat anybody, no matter how bad they are, 12 out of 13. But it might be the difference of this Twins club staying in contention or not. Because if you had just won every series against them, which most times, anytime you win a series, you'd say, oh, it was a good series. You might be 9-4 instead of 12-1. Well, that 3-game difference might be what keeps the Twins in the hunt in the American League Central. Even right now, coming into today, they were 4 back. Well, if they had been 9-4 against the White Sox, they'd have been 7 back.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't really be talking about a realistic chance to win the division. And they have taken advantage of them. They've had to
12 straight losses at Target Field for them.
Yeah. And a couple of them have been tight games, but somehow, some way, if you just let the White Sox be the White Sox, they'll find a way to beat themselves and you'll win.
Yeah, that was the game Buxton got hurt in, by the way, that unbelievable catch in center. They were great play by the at first base too. But anyway, so I brought my nephews, so my brother, my sister-in-law, my mom came to the game as well. And before the game, we went, I got my nephews on the field just to watch them warm up and stuff. And my nephews 11 and 9. They're just huge baseball fans, play baseball, that stuff. So they were loving it. But first of all, that Tony Diaz, the assistant bench coach, what a nice guy. Every time I'm back there, he like comes up to me just to like say hi to the guests I'm with, and he doesn't know me from Adam. He just seems like the nicest guy. Yeah. And then, but then I ran to Target and got my oldest nephew a Royce Lewis jersey, but they didn't have my youngest nephew's size. So I bought him just a cool twin shirt. And then Royce Lewis sees the jersey. So he comes up to my nephew's and couldn't have been nicer. And then during the game, second at bat for him, he hits a 3-run dinger at opposite field. And my nephews went crazy because they were so excited that it was him. So that was really sweet. But the funniest thing that happened before the game.
Let me just interrupt you 1 second with Royce Lewis, because we were talking about him a little bit during this series. And he has that superstar it factor that not a lot of guys have. And number one, he's got like worldly talent. He's unbelievable, but he's just got that presence, that smile, that everything that you want in a superstar. And here's a number that we looked up before our show today. The most career home runs in your first 105 games in the big leagues. There are 6 guys ever in the history of baseball who hit more home runs in their first 105 games in the big leagues than Royce Lewis.
That's crazy.
And think about the names above him. I mean, one of them is Mark McGwire. He's at the top of the list. Cody Bellinger, but he's tied with Aaron Judge. He's tied with Bobby Abreu. I mean, that's like.
How many of those 6 might have been in the era of Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa?
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. But when you look at what he's done, the guy has yet to, even in 3 years combined, he's still only played 2/3 of one big league season because of injury. And yet no moment is too big. When we saw last year what he did in the playoffs, first 2 at bats in the playoffs, he hits 2 home runs. There's something about superstars that just have that. Somehow, some way, they wind up in the big spot. They wind up in the right place. They wind up at the plate with the game on the line. And he's one of those guys that does that, thrives in it, and then has this that you're talking about, the personality that supports it, that makes him special.
Taking pictures, and it was just really sweet. And actually during the game, I went up to the press box just to say hi to some of my colleagues, and I was telling them the story about how he treated my nephews. And a couple of the writers told me, like, we are almost waiting for him to just do something that just says he's a little human. Like, everybody's got a bad day, but he just never shows it. If he's a little late to talk to the press, he apologizes, like all this type of stuff. It's like, they'll ask him before a game, like, hey, can I get you for a second? He goes, you know what? I got to just quickly do this, but I will be back here in 8 minutes. And 8 minutes, sure enough, he like strolls in to talk to the
which you and I both know is not the norm for superstar athletes.
Yeah. But you'll love this story. So my mom, who, she has no idea who Royce Lewis is. She's just happy to be on the field watching her grandkids have fun. She is watching Royce Lewis sign the jerseys and take pictures. So my mom creeps up to him and goes, how much are those ground ball machines? And Royce looks up like there's no way that she's talking to him, right? There's this is not a groundskeeper. So he's like, what's that? And she just again repeats, how much are those ground ball machines? And he like turns around and goes, I don't know, not that expensive, like maybe $60. And she's just all excited. She's like, she goes to Adam. She goes, I'm getting them for Ari and Liam. And Adam and I are just laughing hysterically that she would ask a superstar player.
First of all, it's a ridiculous question. But the only thing that I've met your mom. Your mom's the best. She's the biggest Michael Russo fan I've ever met. The only thing that's probably crossing her mind is, I wonder how big a star Michael Russo is to Royce Lewis.
Well, who's the second baseman? Larnach?
Trevor Larnach. He's an outfielder.
Oh, outfielder. Okay, there you go. She goes up to him. He's signing autographs for them, and she goes up to him and goes, "Are you a hockey fan?" And he goes, he again, it's like, what? He goes, do you follow hockey? And thank God he goes something like, no, this takes too much of my time. I don't follow anything else. Thank God he said that.
Well, yeah.
Because there was no doubt she was going to be like, that's Michael Russo. It's a logic.
But so then the second thing, I'm like, what the hell is a ground ball machine?
I don't know.
They don't use machines to
so they had these ground balls something or other out there. Adam looked it up on the internet. Royce was a little low on the price. It was
I believe they don't have any machine that costs $60. But when they field ground balls, they get hit.
They had something out there that they were using for ground balls. So
guys hit them ground balls.
It wasn't the fungo. So it was some sort of thing out there that they had, because on Sundays they don't do batting practice, so they were doing these other things out there. Maybe this is the problem. It was the White Sox guys that were using this machine.
Well, I think maybe they're trying to reinvent the wheel over there in Chicago.
By the way, that is the other thing about the White Sox. So, I gotta say, after watching their whole presence warming up for that third game of that series, it's very easy to see why they suck. There was nobody out there doing anything other than schmoozing and laughing. And I'd be so, if I played for them, I'd be so humiliated about the way they're playing that I would be out there with a little grit.
You have to just start laughing it off. You come to the ballpark knowing you're going to get your ass kicked again tonight, and at some point you have to just be able to say hey, it's baseball. We've been mathematically eliminated since April 15th. I mean, let's just show up and who knows, maybe we find a way to win one tonight. But it's unbelievable how bad they are.
When we come back from this break, I want to talk to you about, so the Athletic had a, let me name it. So Dom Lucian does this. It's called the NHL Front Office Confidence Rankings 2024, how fans feel about every team. He does this in the middle of summer every offseason. The Wild usually grade in the top third of the league at a minimum. And especially when Bill Guerin really started here, the confidence level in him was through the roof. A little alarming, a lot alarming, where they finished this year. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Attorney Jerry Bosch here with Bosch Law Firm and WorkCompExperts.com. For almost 30 years, we've represented Minnesotans just like you all over the great state of Minnesota to guarantee they've been treated fairly and with respect when they've suffered a work-related injury. A work injury can change your life in an instant. You need someone on your side who can help you focus on getting back on your feet and getting paid while you do. You may be entitled to medical benefits, wage loss benefits, job placement, retraining, and payment for permanent disability. To make sure you are being paid all the work comp benefits you're entitled to, please call the attorneys at Bosch Law Firm. The call is always free, and there's never a fee unless we recover benefits on your behalf. Call 651-333-8300, Bosch Law Firm, or visit us at WorkCompExperts.com.
Royal Credit Union's smart checking accounts offer no monthly fees and no minimum balance. Make the switch to a Royal checking account, and you'll also get real-time transaction alerts, free mobile check deposits, and surcharge-free access to over 40,000 ATMs across the U.S. Enjoy financial freedom with no minimum balance and no monthly fees when you switch to Royal's smart checking account. Learn more and open your Royal Credit Union smart checking account online at rcu.org/go-checking. Insured by NCUA.
Spring has arrived at Twill, and we are preparing for summer as well. And I got to tell you, not only is it a great place to buy graduation gifts, gifts for the man in your life, stuff for yourself, it's also a great place. I'm traveling a lot right now covering the Timberwolves. I'm on the road. I'm packing things into a tight suitcase. And what I really notice about the quality of the stuff I get at Twill is that it doesn't wrinkle. It comes out of the suitcase looking good. I tell you what I'm wearing a lot right now, the Brax pants, Johnny O shirts, Peter Millar shirts. They're just made well. So I highly recommend going to Twill in the Edina Galleria. Also sign up for their email alerts at twillmn.com. They will not spam you. They just want you to know when they're going to have a specific event. A lot of the stuff I bought from Twill, I bought at like a buy two or buy three and get one free thing. I have all the dress shirts I need the rest of my life. I bought one time at a Stenstrom's event. So I highly recommend it. Twill in the Edina Galleria. Tell Scott Dayton we sent you, and check out twillmn.com.
Back here, worst seats in the house, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studio. Our next live show is August 14th at 7 p.m. at Split Rocks.
But before you get to the and this is going to sound like a bad segue, but you would have found it entertaining this last weekend. We spent the weekend up at some friend's cabin in Wisconsin, and I know you're always a Phil apologist, but did I tell you this, that Phil has experimented with drugs?
Yes, and I after you told me this during the game last night.
Okay.
I think. And I was bored, so I called you in the middle of your show. And then you called me back. And anyway, after you told me this, I called Margot to admonish her. But anyway, continue.
That Phil was a druggie?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't know that there was a big storm. We were up at this cabin, and I was making dinner, so I wasn't really aware of it. And I came to realize that after dinner, the dogs do some tricks. They get treats. They get to try the steak or fish or whatever we've had for dinner that night. And Phil's doing all of his tricks in slow motion. You know, normally his brain goes a little bit in slow motion, but his body goes 1,000 miles an hour. And he's spinning at half speed. And I turned to the table. I said, what the hell is wrong with Phil? And apparently because this storm had come through and he was scared of the thunder and lightning, our host had said, well, we given our dog drugs to help her sleep and relax, whatever. So Margot tries it with Phil. So Phil, for the rest of the night, was basically stoned. He was like sluggish. He was staring off into space. He was just acting weird. Well, I knew the moment the drugs wore off in the middle of the night because I woke up to Phil standing on my chest, like pawing at my, hey, it's time to play. Let's go. I'm back.
It's like something about Mary that when they gave it a dog speed.
Right, and they electrocute the dog back to life and everything else. Well, Phil came back to life in the middle of the night. He all of a sudden was back to Phil.
That's funny. I don't know if it was Valium or what. She read the drug to me and I Googled it. It seems harmless.
It was harmless.
Yeah.
So
but he definitely
we don't have to worry about Phil and any long-term
was that the last
effects.
time you were at this cabin? He got into the garbage and was like sick?
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. He ate garbage. We didn't know he had eaten garbage, but he was acting weird. He was like laying out in the yard on his side, and it was pouring rain outside, and yet he's just like laying down under this tree. And on the way home, he got sick, and we put it together that he had gotten into the garbage in the cabin. So, I don't know what Phil's had some trauma at this cabin.
So we have some really good Twitter questions, but let me go through this. So I mentioned before the break that we did this fan confidence ratings, and the way it works is that Dom puts out a Google Doc and with all these different questions for the public, the general public, and then noting if you're just sort of the Wild fan base. So it's two different rankings, but they're very, very even. And the confidence in the Wild front office is not very good right now. In fact, the drop from last year, Anthony, is crazy. They've plummeted to 24th in the league, and their decrease from last year is 65% in the fan base, 25% in the general public. Now, I will say this. I did reach out to Dom, and I just asked for the number, because the one thing that struck me is that Joe Smith and myself did – actually, I should say I had Joe reach out to Dom. And because we did a poll in June, I believe it was, Joe and myself, where we had a bunch of questions asking about the confidence in Bill Guerin in the front office, blah, blah, blah. And while it was definitely a decrease, it was nothing like this. And ours was 3,500, 4,000, maybe even more people responding to our poll. The Wild fans that responded to him were something like 650. So the sample size is that's obviously going to skew the numbers.
Going down, even in a smaller sample size.
It's crazy.
It went down 65%.
65%, and the Wild are 24th in the league in front office confidence. Now, roster building, I'm just going to go with the Wild fans here. Not take away, because it's similar regardless. Take away the general public of general hockey fans. So the Wild got a C. 24th in the league. Roster building, C-, 26th in the NHL. Cap management, D, 28th in the NHL. Obviously skewed in a large part because they're tight because of the Parisian suitor. Draft and developing, B, that's 12th in the NHL, but even that's lower compared to what you would expect where their draft and development have been. Trading, C, 24th in the NHL. Free agency, D+, 27th in the NHL. Vision, C-, 25th in the NHL. And total C-, 26th in the NHL. So basically, and then he quotes some fans and then he gives a synopsis. So basically where people are a little concerned are the giving contract extensions to middle six guys and not, and what fans believe is not giving the ability to either go out and spend on top tier talent or putting their young kids in the lineup and just going with it and letting them develop. I'm not going to read everything. This was done before the Brock Faber extension, which, I think we all believe is going to be a steal of a contract at some point. Obviously, Boldy and Erickson X deals, I think we can both agree, are terrific. They're drafting and developing, mostly drafting by Judd Brackett and his crew has been really good. But it's got to be concerning to the Wild that the confidence right now in Bill Guerin has definitely taken an unbelievable fall.
Yeah, well, I think it would be concerning from a business standpoint because if that's your fan base, you always have to be at least a little bit reactive to what your fan base does. But I also think if you're convicted in your plan, then we knew that this plan was going to look something like this at this point prior to those buyouts expiring.
Yeah, what skewed it was the fact that somehow in their first 2 years of this major pain, they actually had 100-point seasons, made the playoffs. Exactly. This year, maybe reality can't hit.
And, well, yes, because of the lack of depth.
Playoffs
lack of depth. And for sure they had lack of depth those first couple of years, but stayed healthy enough and had some guys have huge seasons. But I think if you're convicted in your plan where you feel like we absolutely believe in where we're headed, then I don't think it matters if the fans think that we've spent too much money on third and fourth lines. Well, and I want to go dig this up. I don't know these numbers off the top of my head, but I think there's a feeling out there like the Wild have overpaid for third and fourth line players. And my first instinct would tell me that the teams that have had success have spent at least this amount on their third and fourth lines. That it's where the difference is that they've had some guys in their top six that are not making the $9-10 million a year that you have to pay for a blue chip free agent, but rather are guys they've developed from within that have evolved into top six players that are at affordable prices. Because I don't think you can build a team. There just aren't very many. Those free agents only come up so often that are going to be legit top six, let's say top three forwards. I don't know. Like if you look at Florida last year, look at Colorado a couple of years ago, and look at the guys that were on their third lines. What we're paying in Minnesota for third line guys is not out of line with what those guys. I mean, let's say your third line ends up having Hartman, Trennan, Foligno on it, and it might have Johansson instead of one of those guys. It might have Rossi instead of one of those guys and be even less. But let's just say it's those three guys. That's about as expensive a third line as you could see the Wild's roster. I don't know how you see it, but if you look at their lineup, I don't know another way where you get more money on your third line.
Yeah,
and you're
still 10.5 with those.
Be 10.5 with those. I mean, that isn't that ridiculous. Look at the Dallas team that beat Minnesota in the playoffs a year before. We talked about the fact that it was because their third line was so much better. And when guys on the top went down, they had, I don't know what Tyler Seguin was making that year, but it was $9 million. Mm-hmm. Well, he was a third liner for them all year long. Why is it then the Wild paying $10 million for their third line is out of whack? Dallas had a $9 million guy on their third line, and it paid dividends because when Pavelski got hurt in the playoffs, here came Tyler Seguin. Mm-hmm. Well, imagine if somebody goes down in the Wild's top six, and now, I got Ryan Hartman, who scored 34 goals in the NHL 2 years ago, is my third line guy. He could certainly move up in a lineup, or if I'm using Johansson or Rossi down there, they're guys that could move up. So I just don't think the way that roster is structured is as flawed as maybe some fan thinks. And if I'm a Wild front office guy and I say, I believe in our young guys, our Height, our Urov, or whatever, that 2 or 3 years down the road, these guys are going to be top six guys for me, then why wouldn't I want to lock up this kind of a sturdy, physical, gritty third, fourth line type guys that you have? Those are the guys that you can't find. Look at what they got in the free agent market. Look at what Trennan commanded earlier in his career in terms of like trade value. I mean, there are teams out there willing to give up a lot for guys like this to build depth in their lineup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Foligno's the one example there where like he would have been highly sought. Now,
For sure,
unfortunately, he would have been, if they didn't extend him, he would have been an unrestricted free agent after having core surgery. So maybe that would have changed everything. But
I still think there's teams
to think
out there
that he would
give
not
him
have
this
gotten
deal.
a long-term deal at 4+ is definitely outlandish. I think what the fans are definitely, I think the fans were bought into the whole Parisi Suter thing under the belief that when they came out of it, that this team was going to go after this guy and Draisaitl, and
Right.
and now
But
they have committed so much to these middle six guys and Middleton that they can't.
To me, what the big difference with that is Brock Faber.
Yeah, they
That's
never
expected to have this blue chip defenseman that was going to cost him $8.5 million. Well, that in and of itself. Would you rather go out and take a shot at a free agent for, let's say, $10 million for a top 6 winger, or have Brock Faber for 8 times 8.5? I'd take Brock Faber 10 times out of 10.
Right. Now, all that might be true, and you're making a lot of good points, but perception a lot of times is reality. And to get back to the original question, if this is if there is this perception with the fan base that they are losing confidence in the vision of this franchise, that is eventually going to hurt the gate. And that's
right.
where,
that's what I was saying from a business standpoint.
That's where there's going to start to be concerns.
I wouldn't let it bother me at all in terms of where you're headed as a hockey team.
Right.
If you still believe in that plan, like if you still believe that, look, we've got all this in place, and here's the way we lay out our roster. And I know you've talked to them about it. We've had conversations with the front office about it where they've given us a little glimpse into like, look, here's where we see ourselves in 24 and 25 and 26. If you still believe in that, and that's where I was getting at, like if you have conviction that that plan is right, then it doesn't matter what the fans think. But from a business standpoint, it absolutely does. If tickets aren't being sold, if butts aren't in the seats, if jerseys aren't being sold, if sponsors aren't jumping on board, and this is indicative of that, then you have to be concerned. You absolutely have to be concerned. And I'm sure that they are, from where they know that it's a put up or shut up time on the ice. They're getting very close to that. We've talked so many times during this buyout process that I don't think you can really evaluate, was it the right move or the wrong move, until the 25-26 season, because that's where you had restructured the roster. If you were able to do it without bottoming out, which is what most teams in the NHL do when they revamp their roster, they were able to do it by staying competitive throughout, making the playoffs every year but one, a couple 100-point seasons, as you mentioned. If you're able to do that, and now 25-26 comes and you are ready to be a contender in the West, this plan was a huge success. If 25-26 comes and you look like a roster that's still got huge gaping holes in it, then it didn't work. And I think it's legit at that point to then criticize and say this plan was flawed and there were mistakes made.
And fair or not, that puts a ton of pressure on the Wild to get Kaprizov extended next summer, because if all of a sudden that does go haywire, man, the confidence with this fan base is going to be really brutal. Aren't you actually hosting a sort of a town hall next little bit? I think I read that.
I might be.
Somebody should tell you. I could be completely wrong. You know what? I know they're having some sort of town hall with Bill Guerin and season ticket holders, and maybe I'm just assuming that you're emceeing it because you did the last
couple of those in the past.
Yeah, I was at one, and I feel like I was just looking for the email, and I could have sworn that you were hosting it.
It could be.
Somebody should tell you if that is the case. All right, let's just go to some quick Twitter questions, then we'll wrap up the pod because Anthony's got date night tonight, and you're already late for that. Nick Braun, what job opportunity would you ever leave covering the Wild for? That might be for me. Is there any job that you would ever leave this, like, hey, I'm moving to Utah?
Well, not another team job for sure. People have asked me a number of times if I'd have interest in national jobs, and it would have to be a really, really good deal. I'm lucky. I'm covering the National Hockey League and Major League Baseball in my hometown. And there's nothing better. I've got the best job in the world. I love being a part of both Wild Hockey and Twins baseball. And it would have to be one really special job and not that I'd ever base decisions exclusively on finances, but it would have to be something that would really be attractive, like life-changing attractive for me to want to leave. My family's rooted here. I love living here. I love the fans here. I love the teams here, the organizations here. I can't imagine what that deal would be.
Yeah, and I have some things.
It wouldn't be for another local team's job. I can say that for sure. Like if it was to cover, and I prefer the covering one team to the national deal as a full-time deal. Like I'd love the opportunity to call some national games on nights the Wild aren't working or Wild aren't playing, or once the playoffs move past the first round. Believe me, I'd love to do that. But I watch the way those guys live their life during the NHL season, and it's hard. It's so much more fun, so much more enjoyable to be connected to one team, build those relationships with the team, the players, the fan base. I prefer that.
Yeah. And, obviously we all think about the future, and, my contract's up in a year. So you never know what the future is going to bring. But, let's put it this way. There's no job writing that I would ever leave this for. My next job, hopefully I'm never writing again. All right. Twin Cities, Chris goes, Laine at 50% retained for Gaudreau and Rossi. Who says no? Hopefully everybody involved with the Wild says no. That would be an absurd trade. A 22-year-old stud like Marco Rossi for Patrick Laine at 2 years left at 50% retained. Plus, it doesn't work financially.
The Wild would say no.
Yeah.
We can just answer it that simply.
Charming Chad says, whatever happened to James Shepard? Last I heard, he was playing in Germany and Austria. I don't know. Robert Duffy goes, are the Wild 100% sure in Wallstedt being an elite NHL goalie? I mean, nothing's for certain.
No.
You got to
goaltending's the hardest position to project. But at this point in his career, he looks like as sure a bet as any goalie at that same point in their career. Exactly. So right now he's done everything that they would have hoped he could do. He's on the right path, the right track, but goaltending is almost, it's not impossible, but it is a very difficult position to scout.
Yeah. KKC goes, do you think there's a world where the Wolves and Wild build a new joint stadium together? Only if the Wolves move to St. Paul. That would be the only way. Absolutely not. First of all, the Wolves need to find an owner. Minnesota Wild fans, any feasible way to trade Spurgeon? Not now. I can't see that. Here's a couple fun ones, and we'll wrap up the show. Jade goes, what press box has the best game day grub, Anthony? Now, press box and press room are two different things.
Yeah, that's true. So
Chicago probably has the best press box.
Yeah, for sure.
Press meal. LA is pretty good.
Yeah, and I don't eat
Detroit.
Detroit's good. I don't eat.
Detroit's like a Vegas buffet.
It is, and I don't eat in. There's a lot of the arenas where I don't eat in the press room. Mm-hmm. Any place that I can walk to the rink, I go eat somewhere else because the food anywhere else is always better than what you get in the press room. But Detroit is one where I've eaten a few times just because we're a little isolated there, and it seems like we've had some day games there. So day games I'll tend to eat there. LA isn't bad. In the press box, Chicago's number one, and there's one place where they have pizza that isn't bad. Edmonton, I think, actually. Mm-hmm. They have pizza that is, and I don't eat a ton during games, but that's one place where I don't mind grabbing a slice of pizza during intermission because it's pretty
shockingly
good.
I actually stay away from the press box stuff. But yeah, LA, Detroit, probably, I'm trying to think.
This is a question for Gorg because that's for him. It's funny when people ask me, like, what's your favorite city to visit? Mm-hmm. And for me, there's a few things that, like, number one, are there good restaurants, bars, live music kind of places around there? How's the hotel gym?
This really is a good question for Gorg. We've actually
right, but I'm saying like
Tampa when press room.
I've never eaten there, but when people ask me,
because you're always getting your eye looked at.
Right. When people ask me where I like to go, that I evaluated on like restaurants and bars in the neighborhood. Like, where am I going to get a good dinner and some good wine, good music? Is the hotel gym good? Can I walk to the rink? For Gorg, it's the press dining room and is a movie theater close by. I mean, it's just different. But he has for him, every trip is, we get to go here because the mess hall's got great food. And I don't eat it very often. So he'd be a better guy to ask for that. And
Carolina, good press room.
Trying to remember where he always talks about as being great.
Carolina. He loves talking about it. He calls it the mess hall.
The mess hall. That's what I just said. Yeah. He has a mess hall rating.
Yeah.
And Carolina, I've eaten a couple times. It's not too bad. Yeah. I don't know. I'm the wrong guy to ask. But I do like Detroit and LA aren't bad.
Yeah. All right. A couple fun ones, actually. Greece goes, I like this question. Do you guys ever get nervous? I'll start because you're the one that has to go on TV every night. So that's actually a great question. But the only time I've ever been nervous for radio was after Paul Fenton was fired and I did that big expose at the end of July or early August of that year in 2019. I went on Spit and Chicklets, and I've been on Spit and Chicklets before. I was never nervous, but this one I was nervous. And I remember calling Paul Bissonnette. I'm like, hey, I cannot be led down any bad paths here. I got to be very professional, all that stuff, because I was getting threatened to be sued and all this stuff. So I just wanted to be straight. In terms of nervous at a game, the only time I've ever really been nervous are like game 7s of the Stanley Cup Finals, because you want to do a really quality job in your writing. You can almost you could sort of expect that, like, if you write a crappy game story for game 48 of the Wild season, you're going to cover game 49. You can make it better. But that's the only time for me. Do you ever get nervous going on TV?
I've never once had even a twinge of nerves when it's come to television. Mm-hmm. And you hope you get the big moments right. I talked to a few people after what was probably the biggest moment that I've called, which was Niederreiter's game 7 winner in Denver. And they've asked me about it. And I said, I'm just relieved that the big moment happened and I got it right, that it wasn't this call that I screwed up and forever you'd hear the wrong call. But I was never nervous at any moment, either during that open or during the game broadcast, because once you get going, you're just going. I've had nerves 2 times in my life. And the first time I felt it, I remember understanding for the first time. I was like, this is what people talk about when they say butterflies in your stomach. I've never felt it before, and I felt it. And it was watching AJ as a starting quarterback. And I suddenly was like, what is going on in my stomach right now? Yeah. I'm feeling some nerves for him. And then the other was when I had to deliver the eulogy at my dad's funeral. Mm-hmm. And I walked up to the lectern, and I stood there. As I was walking up, I absolutely believed I was going to fail. Mm-hmm. I thought, there is no way I'm going to be able to deliver this speech. The church was packed, and I walked up there, and I've never, at that moment, I understood what people felt when they were nervous, because I think I was sweating, and then all of a sudden I got this burst of strength and was able to deliver the speech and do justice to it, I think. But it was, as I was walking up there, it felt like it took me 30 minutes to walk from my pew in the front row of the church up onto the altar, because I remember every step. And the whole time, all I was going through my mind is, you have no chance. You have no chance. There's no way you're going to be able to keep yourself composed and deliver this speech and do justice to your father. So after that, it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know what else could happen that would ever make me nervous again in terms of speaking in front of people or speaking to people. Right. I was able to make it through that. You kind of feel like, all right, if I can do that, if I say the wrong guy scoring the goal, I guess I can live with it. Yeah. Yeah. That's a poignant. That's for sure. And that would be like for nerves for me, or actual real life type things. Even like for me, for as little as obviously I'm not trained in TV, but I mean, you've seen it. I don't get nervous whenever I do spots with you and things like that. I can make you nervous. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, there have been a couple times. The only time was the time in Edmonton where you just freaking didn't show up, and I was like honestly freaking out as they were like in my ear counting down, and you were nowhere to be seen. Yeah, that sucked. All right, let's end on one lighter note. Final question: Sport Crunch, favorite TV series that you have ever watched? I'll start. For me, it's Seinfeld / Curb Your Enthusiasm,
because I put them in the same vein. I think Curb Your Enthusiasm is brilliant because it's not scripted. It's totally improv. They just got outlines essentially of the stories before every scene. I love Succession and things like that, but I would go Seinfeld and Curb.
I think Seinfeld and Curb would be really close for me. I loved The West Wing. I thought it was such a well-written show. I've watched the series probably 4 times where I'll just kind of put it on as background noise while I'm working out or working on game prep or whatever. So I'd say those are probably the I'd put Seinfeld, West Wing, and maybe Curb Your Enthusiasm 1, 2, 3.
Margot's gonna be so pissed at you.
Yeah.
I mean, you are late.
Should I be nervous?
I think you should actually for this one. I think you need to text her right now and tell her that you are, oh, by the way, haven't even left and you're supposed to be there by now.
I'm 3 minutes late for dinner right now.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got a 30-minute drive ahead of you. Thanks to our incredible sponsors, as always. Thanks to Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatments, Bosch Law Firm, Feller's Ranch, Twill and the Edina Galleria, and Royal Credit Union. Talk to you August 14th at 7 p.m. at Split Lawrence. Everybody, see ya.